So today I'm just going to talk a bit more about Vela Bay, the upcoming residential condo in Bayshore. So this is one of the most highly talked about project in Q1 2026. But here's one key thing I think most buyers are missing out on this upcoming new launch. So let's break it down today. So of course, when we look at what is going to be offered in this area, in the Bayshore area, it kind of makes sense why people are actually talking so much about it. On paper, it looks like this is an area that the government is looking to redevelop. This is like somewhat marketed as a Bayshore development master plan kind of thing. And this kind of makes people excited in general. I mean, just last year, there were the first two BTOs in this Bayshore area that was being launched. And of course, when people think about what the government is trying to build in a new township per se, this kind of brings back memories about what's happening in Tengah right now and potentially what happened in Punggol a few years back. So we do know that the owners in Punggol, Sengkang, back then at the start, people always say, wow, so ulu. And then look at what's happening now. Many of the owners who actually bought into the area have actually made decent profits and moved on, and they are actually kind of leveraging on the fact that the government, once they say they are going to develop this new township, they actually bring in all the amenities. And nowadays when you go to Punggol, yes, it might be at one far corner of Singapore, we do see that it is a lot more connected, there's a lot more amenities, and people generally feel that you can actually live in this township. But Bayshore is slightly different though. I mean, this area has already been known to have some development around the area. It is not really outskirts, it is still relatively central, and that is why people are actually getting genuinely excited about this project. Not to mention, they did announce things like the fact that this project will be within 1 kilometer of Temasek Primary, a pretty reputable primary school. And also it is going to be directly connected to Bayshore MRT station, which is along the Thomson East Coast line. So of course this is a brand new line, it's almost fully operational now. There's just a few more MRT stations left to be open that will definitely bring greater connectivity. So like right now you can see it's already connecting us all the way from Woodlands, all the way down to the CBD area, and all the way to the east in the Bayshore Overlook kind of area. And of course the last few remaining stops are actually going to bring us right all the way up to Changi Airport. This kind of brings the connectivity, the infrastructure that the government has already planned ahead of time before they introduce Bayshore as a residential area, right? So when we look at the master plan that the government has actually already published on the URA website, we do see that this is something very interesting. They kind of make it that there will be a transit priority corridor, whereby this will be kind of like a very nice road that connects all of the towns. We already know where the BTOs are going to be. There's a few plots apart from Vela Bay that is already earmarked as residential areas. So for now, we do not know yet whether it will be a HDB or whether it will be a private. We can only speculate so much. Although they did come out and say that about 30% of the plots of land in this area would actually be for condo and 70% would be for BTOs. So we do know that there wouldn't be that many private residential condos that will be coming up in this area, right? And so of course the more exciting thing is that they are really looking to redevelop the whole area. There's already an area that's earmarked to be a future primary school. They did announce on the news that the new biggest SAFRA in Singapore would be built within Bayshore itself. So definitely this will bring about a lot of convenience and amenities. And as you may very well know, if there are going to be new BTOs, there's definitely going to be things like maybe a coffee shop, maybe a Sheng Siong, or maybe things like a hairdresser, a hardware store. So pretty much your everyday convenience things, and this is something that will probably bring people in. And last but not least, the main appeal of Vela Bay is definitely the seafront living, the coastal view. So about 70% of the units in Vela Bay would actually be able to have this sea view facing that is looking directly straight towards East Coast Park, and definitely that is going to be a huge plus point. So I would say in general, when we look at Bayshore, right, it's probably going to look something like two groups of buyers. There'll be probably the 1 and 2 bedrooms investment kind of buyers. Maybe a small percentage of them would be own stay, and then the 3 and 4 bedrooms would definitely call out to those who are actually looking for own stay areas and they really love the east side. And Bayshore is kind of like a premium kind of area to live in with a seaside view. Of course, when we talk about rental demand, you might be thinking, who might want to stay in the Bayshore area? Well, I do think that with the Thomson East Coastline being built up, is definitely going to enhance the connectivity across Singapore. It's not going to be that far away from CBD area. It is also not going to be that far away from Changi Airport. And being in the Bayshore area, I would say you're pretty near to Changi Business Park as well. So definitely I would think that there's going to be a decent rental demand, especially from expats who love to be by the sea. Definitely this is a project that investors should not miss, although I do think that the main appeal is still the own stay appeal, especially those who love to live by the beach, maybe you are foreign and then you just want to have the very beautiful sea view when you step out on your balcony on most days. So now this is the key thing that I was saying earlier on that most buyers should take note. So we do know that the developer is Singhai, and there were actually 8 bids for this plot of land back then, and they managed to secure the land at 1,388 PSF PPR. And this actually brings us to the fact that if you look at the break-even cost, you're going to expect them at the very least to start from 2,800 PSF. And yes, this might sound pretty steep, so this is the main reason why you should continue watching this video and try and understand whether it makes sense to buy into this Bayshore first residential condo, or do you want to look for something else? So of course, before we even talk about whether Bayshore is going to be expensive, we do know for a fact that there are actually other plots of land that has potentially lesser appealing points, I would say. So we do know that the Bedok Rise GLS, which is just across the road from the Tanah Merah MRT, they also secured, all green secured it at 1,330 PSF PPR. And then there's also the Chuan Grove GLS, not exactly beside the MRT, it's around the Lorong Chuan area, pretty central as well. That was secured at 1,331 PSF PPR. And then of course we do have Lentor Central. This GLS site actually was locked down at 1,278 PSF PPR, and this is definitely not near the MRT. There's not that many amenities. It's a bit like a new township per se, a lot of landed enclaves nearby, and we do not know yet how the Lentor projects are going to perform. The very first Lentor project, of course, Lentor Modern has just TOP'd this year, so I do look forward to see how that performs. Last but not least, Tanjong Rhu is a pretty central site. CDL managed to secure it at 1,455 PSF. So when you step back and think about the land cost and all that, you might start to think that the Bayshore plot of land, this Vela Bay, might not exactly be the most expensive, provided you believe that having MRT access and the seaside front coastal living is very important. But here's the thing that I actually want to ask people to take a step back and maybe have a consideration, like what kind of PSF would actually be too expensive. So I mean, for a fact, we do know that there are only 8 sea-fronting condos in this area. Most of them are pretty old. I mean, I do know buyers who actually ask me whether they can buy projects like Laguna Park, Bayshore Park, Mandarin Gardens, Neptune Court, because they are so old that there's a chance of en bloc, right? I mean, obviously, if en bloc is your thing, you can consider those, but we do not know whether any developer would be able to buy over such a massive plot of land, especially for some of them. They are very large pieces of land and filled with many projects, so the cost definitely isn't going to be cheap, even if they manage to en bloc it, right? But that aside, let's talk about what might be too expensive, right? So when we do look at all of these, if let's say we are being conservative and we do think that a 2008 PSF for Vela Bay is going to happen, a 3-bedroom is going to be a harmonized project, it's going to be MRT access, it's going to have the seafront living like all of the rest. If we take a look at the slightly newer projects in the area, maybe let's just look at Costa del Sol, which is just across the road. That was TOP in 2004. We can also probably look at Seaside Residences, which just TOP in 2021 actually. Yep, so these are the two probably the newer projects in this area. I mean, we can compare with the 3 bedrooms and the 4 bedrooms around this area. So we do know that if let's say we are expecting it to start from 2008 PSF, we might be looking at 900 square feet, a 3-bedroom compact at around 2.5 million. But we do know for a fact that actually Costa del Sol, that's really the highest, transacted at 2.78 million. Seaside Residences also 3.4 million. But of course, do take note that these are actually larger floor plates because they belong to the older non-harmonized projects. And back then, there might be some wasted space and whatnot. You definitely have to take a look at the layout before you decide whether it makes sense for you. But what I'm trying to drive at is, if let's say we were to look at, we do know that in most new launches, 2008 might be the starting from, but it could go as high as 3002, 3003, 3004 PSF even. I personally think that at 3004 PSF, definitely it will be too high. So don't let the emotion of the hype get you carried away during the booking process, right? Because if you're looking at 3004 PSF and you think that it's normal because you feel like Bayshore is a premium, there's not that many condos with a seafront viewing facing, and you feel it's okay to pay this amount, and this is kind of the amount that you might see in the CCR region. For 900 square feet, you might be looking at paying almost 3.06 million for a 3-bedroom compact in Bayshore area, because get carried away by the hype that this is going to be the next up and coming new residential area. And I do think that it's going to be a bit too much to stomach, because when we look into new launches, if you want to protect your exit, you kind of have to take a step back and think who your future resale buyers will be. What are the competition around you? Are they going to go for that or yours? Yes, you might have the MRT access. Yes, you might be harmonized. But that does not necessarily mean that people would definitely go for yours. And if you enter too high as compared to your other neighbors, that is where you are going to restrict yourself a little bit too much. Yeah. So even at 3002 PSF, I do think that you can still consider to enter, because that brings you to somewhere around 2.88 million. You are already safely aware that Costa del Sol is very near to that. Seaside residences already go way above that. Being harmonized, having MRT access, that gives you a bit of comfortable breathing space. Of course, if you are looking to exit in a very short run, it might still be a bit of a risk, but if you are holding it for the longer term because you envisage yourself staying there for quite a bit, I do believe that the Singapore property market in general should still be able to support this kind of price range. Even for the 4-bedroom, if you are looking at a 2,800 PSF for 1,200 square feet, you will be looking at around 3.36 million. So likewise, we do know that Costa del Sol has already hit 3.41 million for the 4-bedroom. Seaside residences already hit 4.4 million. So I would say 2000 PSF, definitely it might be a bit of a good green light, no-brainer, go ahead for it. I think you'll be in a good spot to exit in the near future once you cross your SSD period, or maybe let's say about in a 5 to 6 year time span. We do know that there are going to be more projects in the area, but do take note, when we talk about potential resale buyers, please do not expect them to be from the Bayshore BTO buyers. Don't forget, those are under the prime living HDBs, so those are under the 10-year MOP period. By the time they actually MOP and able to sell, we do not know how the market would react, or be able to support the sale of such prime projects given all the restrictions that HDB has already put in. It might not necessarily mean that even if your time horizon is long enough to wait for that 10-year MOP period for them, it does not mean that they might be able to afford the prices you need in order to exit at a comfortable profit in the future. Yep, just take note of that. I would think that your main upgrader pool would likely have to come from the east side lovers, so they could actually come from the newer BTO owners area or Tampines area. Yeah, so these two areas, I guess, for the newer HDBs at least, they still have the potential selling ability to cash out and move over. Or potentially, of course, we do know that Revel is one of the latest Tampines EC. Potentially those owners, the timeline might fit your timeline if you are looking at a longer holding period. Potentially those are the owners that might be able to sell, cash out on their ECs, and then move in and buy over your Vela Bay because they want a full seaside facing condo living lifestyle. Always take a step back, understand the project, understand the hype. I would say that Vela Bay definitely has its plus points, but if you take a step back, look at the entry price, look at the budget you're looking at, look at what your end goals are, you might realize that it might not necessarily be the best choice just to go in just because your queue number, when it's caught, you still have some units left over. Always compare the prices. We do know that the upcoming Bedok South MRT plot of land integrated transport, it has already been released for sale. Potentially, if the land bid cost is higher, you might expect them to sell higher, but definitely that will come with a lot more amenities right at their doorstep. So we do know that Pioneering Residences, for example, the integrated Tampines West development, that was like more than 90% sold on launch day itself. So we do know that projects with amenities right at your doorstep, they kind of sell out a bit better, and even if they command a slightly higher premium, it might still go well. So do not use that to kind of hedge against your risk, that might not be the wisest choice. So just look at the quantum and the PSF that you're entering. I do think that whatever you think are the plus points of Bayshore might already be priced in. MRT, Thomson East Coast Line, everybody knows it, everybody knows what's coming up, everybody knows it's going to be connected to Changi Airport. That's something will be taken note of. Transformation of the Bayshore area, maybe you might think that might be a good idea. Any buyer around you would probably already know what's going to happen in the area. Probably the developer already priced in all of this even when they bid it at 1,300 over PSF PPR, right? And of course the exit competition, that's going to be the main thing. I mean, it'll be interesting to know how Costa del Sol and seaside residences continue to perform, especially with the launch of Vela Bay. Definitely when people start looking at Vela Bay, they might start thinking, I don't want to wait, or maybe my queue number sucks, I couldn't get it, I'm going to go for Costa del Sol, and I don't mind paying a bit more because my budget allows for it. So just take note and be a bit wary of, observe the market a little bit. I do think that if you are considering to exit in a short period of time or whatnot, you have to be extra sensitive to these kind of numbers. And definitely not all units would perform the same. Do a very comprehensive stack analysis. I would say that definitely the sea view facing would command a premium, especially from the developer's point of view. That's going to be my guess. I do not know whether that would really be the case, but most likely I believe so. So take note of the facing, the levels, everything is going to affect, and you have to gauge for yourself whether the jump in prices actually makes sense for you to take the plunge to go for a higher floor or for the better view facing. Just take note of that. Yep, so I mean that's the end of my analysis. This video isn't really talking about whether Vela Bay is good or bad. I mean, we do know what is driving the demand for Vela Bay in the Bayshore area. We do know potential drawbacks that I've just highlighted. Definitely it will be something worth considering, but the main thing is really understanding what your requirements or what your end goal is, what your timeline is. I mean, let's not talk about budget, because I mean, if you have the budget, then just go ahead for it if you believe it matches whatever you have in end of the mind, end of the goal. Yep. The main thing about this video is really for you to kind of sit back, have a think about whether it really makes sense for you. Does this project fits well with your expected angle, your timeline, and the budget you're looking at? And last but not least, if you are looking at Bayshore and you're unsure whether you want to look at the new launch Vela Bay, wait for the upcoming integrated development nearer to Bedok South MRT, or maybe it's better to look at the resale area because you really love this Bayshore area, feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to give you a very comprehensive market analysis of this Bayshore area so you can make the best well-informed decision for you and your family. See you guys.